okay today. I thought I'd have a bit of a ramble on a subject I may well have talked about before in passing, but I think it's worth revisiting. And well, it is now, because probably those videos do not exist anymore, so doubly so. If I did talk about it, it was almost certainly on a video concerning Mr. Charles Cornish Dale, the 100% dark Welsh non-Sephardic influencer known as Raw Egg Nationalist. That guy, totally organic influencer at that. And it was on the subject of like the Sigma male and this new kind of the Sigma mindset, and like how all that little sphere, which is mostly like Bronze Age pervert, Jewish homosexual, Costin Alamiru. And I mean Milo's flitting around that. He's a Jewish homosexual also. Peter Thiel is also similarly inclined and of that stock. And but Raw Egg Nationalist, no, he's dark Welsh. He's dark Welsh. Case closed. Okay, well, whatever. But that whole little milieu, that whole little clique, a very, very adept little bit of social engineering, that little clique, in my view. I think it's premeditated. I think, Costin Alamiru, Jewish homosexual, Bronze Age pervert, he attended, I don't know, I think it was Yale, I think. He attended the more Jewy version of Yale or Harvard. I can't remember which is which. Historically, one is kind of a bit more Anglo, and the other one is a bit more sort of chess club. Hey guys, kind of like, those kind of things. Well, he went to that one, apparently. Raw Egg Nationalist, he attended Oxford and Cambridge, studied academia for 10 years. That guy. Well, anyway, let's move on. These people, they have all pushed this kind of Sigma mindset, and it's a kind of cartoon that they give you. Now, I do need to stress, I find all these terms quite tedious, but we have to explore them a little bit in order to analyze them. I mean, if you went back 10 to 15 years in what was then the manosphere, it was all about being the alpha. I mean, that was kind of equally tedious in itself, to be honest with you, because it was all like, rah! Well, it was mostly Yanks, wasn't it? So, I'm the fucking alpha. Oh my God, I totally dominate the conversation. Like, whatever. It's like the cartoony version of an alpha. I mean, I'm sure that created just an unspeakable amount of twats. Like people who tried to be an alpha when they kind of weren't. Which, I mean, that is just like you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole with all this stuff, which is why I kind of think it's stupid. But, whatever. That was the goal, to be the sort of dominating kind of figure in the group, to be the leader of men, like this kind of thing. And it seems that has changed, I don't know when, like, I don't know, maybe the last 5, maybe more years, specifically. I mean, maybe this is just a hyper focus, and I'm sure it exists in other groups, but that BAP sphere really did push it. And it's all about being the Sigma. Well, I mean, in sort of like, real terms, the Sigma is like competent, but he's not dominating, and he's kind of a bit more kind of independent, and he wants autonomy, he doesn't want leadership and all this kind of stuff. And, it's all fair enough. But like what you get from them is you get a sort of cartoonized sort of facsimile of it. So what they actually push, when they push like be the Sigma, they're basically saying act like a bit of an autistic weirdo. Which, you're telling like young guys, I don't really think it's very good for them. Like this kind of model to take it on. Be the fucking slightly odd bloke that people don't really have a read on. I don't know, don't be a team player. Like, I don't know. I mean, we can fast forward. Like, I mean, if you're going to look at this from a sort of social engineering perspective, which, well, I will, it is a bit suspicious to me, because if you're looking, let's just get all black pilly here, why not? And we'll say, okay, the next, say, 10 to 15 years, not going to go well, really. It's going to get progressively worse. It's going to come on top in various European cities and towns and all the rest of it. like, European men need to be able to function within teams. They need to be able to communicate effectively with others. They need to be, team players capable within structures. Be able to perform roles to tasks.
Colour sergeant. Sir. I want half your men. Now.
Even number, sir.
Form 2 lines on the double.
Sir.
Like this kind of stuff. If you've imbibed all this, be the Sigma, be the weird guy, be the sort of autist, which is basically the kind of cartoon they give you. Like, they basically distort it. And the Sigma in their little memes and anything like that is the guy who just spends like all day like lifting weights, like some big grogmeister. And he doesn't need anyone. He's totally socially detached. And he doesn't engage in the rest of the world and everything. And he's above caring about anything. He doesn't have any vulnerability. He doesn't really pursue emotional growth. You know what I mean? It's just like this kind of resentment and kind of like detachment. And like this kind of thing to imbibe and then go into the next 10 years where, it's not really going to be very useful for the group. When I say the group, I mean the group that might, be on the back foot and require coordination, and functional community and all this kind of stuff. This is what makes me suspicious of it. Now, they're kind of like pushing this stuff all the time. It's like, essentially what they're pushing is this kind of performative detachment to the world. Now, as I say, I think their market is 20 to 30-year-old guys, mostly. These are the guys that need to be getting into teams. Like, they need to be, becoming competent within teams and within structure and hierarchies. Again, this is looking at a sort of bleak next 20 years for the European peoples. You off like having like ridiculous traps or whatever, because all you eat is fucking liver, and you just work out every day and then do nothing else. Or, I mean, whatever. I don't know. The sort of bullshit they push. Raw egg nationalist, like in his garden. Oh my God, guys, I'm such a Sigma. I train with my shirt off and I swing my mace around, which I made at home. Rah! It's just like, no, you're just acting weird, mate. Why don't you do some press ups in your fucking house? I don't know, like, it's all this is performative. And he's saying, oh my God, my neighbours watch me, they must think I'm really weird. Yeah, they probably do, mate, but probably not for the same reasons that you suspect. But this isn't a healthy mindset. Like, you need to be getting into teams if you're a young guy. You need to be performing in hierarchies. You need to be, competent. This kind of like performative detachment that they push, it's kind of like it's embedding kind of social isolation in the subject. And that's the term I will use, because if you are a 20 to 30-year-old and you're flitting around in the Bronze Age pervert Jewish homosexual Kostanan Leviru and his little other Jewish homosexual friends, if you're in their little orbit, you are the subject, because this is nudge unit shit, absolutely. And would you believe it, seems to be a lot of Jews behind it, which is interesting. You can draw your own conclusions from that. Oh, well, one of them's not Jewish, though. He's dark Welsh, just to be clear. I want to avoid any kind of confusion on that issue. He is 100% dark Welsh. Oh, well, he is dark Welsh. He's maybe a bit of English, but he's definitely not a Sephardic Jew, pretending. But other than that, they all seem to be like, Jewish. Well, when there's a pattern like that, you do have to, notice it and draw your own conclusions. And that's what I would suggest you should do, really. And I'm not saying people need to go out and be the alpha. I'm not saying they need to shun being the Sigma. Just be yourself. I mean, I know this is really fucking tedious cliche, isn't it? It sounds like boomer advice, like. But, it is kind of true. Like, just don't get drawn into performative masculinity. Like, of any, just try and be competent. And being competent does essentially mean being competent in teams, in hierarchy. That is how the British have the greatest fucking empire that the world has ever seen. That's my view. Others may point to others, but there is teamwork and hierarchy, and teamwork and structure and competence, and people that are good at systems and applying systems. It's not people who spent the whole fucking day, running up and down a hill and lifting a rock above their head and eating liver. They ate porridge. Oh my God, they were grain cells. Ah! It's the sort of shit that fucking raw egg nationalist, 100% dark Welsh, comes out with. They attack eating porridge. Oh my God, you should just eat eggs. Well, it's just we conquered the world eating porridge and bread cakes and eating cheese and potted meat and stuff. You know what I mean? Stuff that he would go, oh my God, this nutrition's terrible. Ah. Again, they're just selling you one weird trick bullshit, performative masculinity, and really when you analyse it, it's not healthy. It's not healthy. So anyway, there you go, bit of a ramble. As ever, make of it what you will. Okay, well back once again with Charles Cornishdale. Old Charlie boy. It was your Charlie. That guy, the definitely dark Welsh, definitely not Sephardic. He's definitely not Sephardic because he's told you he's not. The guy that's obsessed with DNA, that's obsessed with all the fucking deep dives and this is this group and that is that group. He's never actually presented his ancestry results. And the guy who's constantly be told, "Why, are you really British? Because you don't look very British, mate." Oh yeah, I'm dark Welsh and maybe a bit of Cornish. But he's never spent 50 quid to spit in a vial and get some statistics to spurg out over. Oh, that's congruous. Oh, I don't know. I'm thinking of the quote from Shakespeare. What see you in those papers that make thy lose such complexion, Mr. Cornishdale? I think I know what we would see, although, perhaps if you lost some complexion, you wouldn't have the same accusations made. Anyway, getting to the point, I can't believe I missed this because I made a video probably about 15 months ago, I guess, which I reposted not long back regarding the pre-raw egg nationalist role Cornishdale and the quite shocking distinctions in the output of the pre-raw egg nationalist, followed by J.D. Vance, totally organic, works for InfoWars. Raw egg nationalist, definitely not connected to the Peterfield Nudge Unit. No, definitely not. And anyway, well, he made a speech in Wells Cathedral, and this was October 2017. Now, I believe he started the raw egg nationalist role early 2019, so this is something like 15 months before, I'm just going to say it, rebranding as a based weightlifter who went around owning people for brown eyes. This guy owned people for having brown eyes, which is just the fucking most autistic thing in the first place. But that's what he was doing, and saying there was too much melatonin or whatever the fuck it is in your eyes, and I don't know, LARPing as an A10 Aryan. I mean, the idea that this guy hasn't gone out and got his fucking DNA checked is ridiculous for a start, if it's congruous. But I think, I think we all know what we'd see in there. Anyway, I just missed the main body of this test. I mean, I pulled out of this one previously how he was kvetching about the New World and Asia were toiling under the yoke of European colonialism, and that Europe was still a Europe of kings and emperors. And I mean, that's what I pulled out of it. But I mean, I fucking missed a trick on this one because it is absolutely full of other stuff, and just a quick read through has yielded that. So I mean, let's just have a look. I've got a few choice bits here. I mean, it's a long speech, and I'm just going to give you that. I'll put it in the text. You can go and read it yourself if you want. It's not badly written. He's not a bad writer, Cornishdale. I mean, he's all right. I won't get carried away, but He's clearly, I mean, he went to Cambridge and Oxford and got a PhD from one of them, so, you know, he's not a dummy. I mean, you know, he's obviously not on Millennial Woes' level, because he's a genius, but, you know, come on. Anyway, well, okay, let's get underway. So, he basically presents, now he's talking about the Reformation, effectively. So, I'll just read the quote, and I'll give you a little sort of, you know, preceding quote as well. So, quote, "The desired aim of religious monopoly proved unachievable. People sickened of persecution, and so concessions to minorities were made, albeit grudgingly. Soon the benefits of a happier kind of toleration made themselves known by the mercantile success of tolerant societies like the Netherlands." End quote. Okay, Charlie. So, you know, the people were toiling under the yoke of persecution, but then sort of toleration arose due to the mercantile success of tolerant countries like the Netherlands. Now, I mean, you know, you can just join the dots. It's just, I don't want to make this long, but you know, the Netherlands did get a significant boost after a certain event in Spain, when a lot of Sephardic people went north to the Netherlands, didn't they? Anyway, multiculturalism. Oh yeah, here we go. The second one. I mean, this is probably the most glaring. We should be careful, though, not to see this as a simple climbing path to today's sunny multicultural uplands. End quote. So again, October 2017. He's giving speeches praising the mercantile success of tolerant countries like the Netherlands, you know, after a certain event in Spain. And then he's, you know, he's praising today's sunny multicultural uplands. Like, so multiculturalism is presented as you know, positive. This is the sort of, you know, this is where everything was leading. This is where progressivism. So it's like a destination, and they've reached the destination from today's sunny multicultural uplands. I think he talks about Transylvania. He rambles a little bit here. Transylvania, now remembered only as the home of Count Dankula. Count Dankula. God, show my age. Blimey. Count Dracula. And was once a beacon of toleration in a Europe that was still at war over the Reformation. Transylvania's status as a borderland of cultures and religions was an important factor in the pragmatism that status engendered in its rulers. So, I mean, there we go, toleration, religious toleration, you know, I mean, that's less malign, I suppose, but it's a diversity. It's presenting a sort of melting pot as a destination, as a positive, you know. I mean, you know, it's a hot skip and a jump away from, you know, diversity is our strength. I mean, he's basically saying, you know, what is it? A borderland of cultures and religions. It's an important factor. And here we go. I mean, number 4, big shout out to Spinoza. Spinoza himself was a Jewish gentleman, philosopher. From the Netherlands. And, well, when he talks about Spinoza, what does he say? Exile, interesting word. Resettlement, interesting word. Cultural exchange, interesting words. Doubt, all fostered by the Reformation and its aftermath. All influences on one of the most individual thinkers in Western philosophy. And then you know, he's talking about Spinoza. So, exile, resettlement, cultural exchange, doubt, all fostered by the Reformation. But I mean, if we're talking about Britain, you know, it was the Reformation, and I mean that led to Cromwell, didn't it? And then Cromwell reversed a certain edict, you know, which you know, well, for some would be exile, wouldn't it? So he reversed that exile, which resulted in resettlement and cultural exchange. And it was fostered by the Reformation and its aftermath, which is presented here as a benefit. Now, he might not be directly speaking about the Edict of Expulsion, but ultimately, That's what he's talking about, and he's talking about it, regards, Mr. Spinoza, who was, a Sephardic Jew, ethnically at least. So that's interesting. It's interesting. And there's one more here. What was this one? Well, I mean, this one, he says, religious fragmentation certainly allowed radical thinkers room for manoeuvre. I mean, I'm not sure that's a good thing historically. Because when you say radical thinkers, I start thinking about, they're not always good, are they? Let's put it that way. The Jesuits, all the rest of it. Well, the Quakers, obviously, a certain group, all the rest of it. For one thing, the Protestants had no Inquisition. Well, no, the Protestants were more lax concerning a certain group. Historically, I think that's fair. So, the Inquisition, I'm sure, broke a few eggs and all the rest of it. But I mean, I don't know. They had a lot more. Certain groups had a lot more room for manoeuvre, as he says here. Radical thinkers. Put your own brackets around those if you see fit. Had more room for manoeuvre. Yes, that I would agree, Charles. That is correct. Radical thinkers did have more room for manoeuvre. So I don't know. I just thought I'd just present these because I just glaringly missed them first time round. And I think these are more, I don't know, they just point to the fact that it's pretty incongruous that 15 months later, he is a based, race-pilled, weightlifter, pretending to be a fucking blue-eyed Aryan on the what the fuck? What the absolute fuck? You can go and watch the other video. You get into how he wrote an essay about the care home industry. And he got his Kvetch on, I think, 2 or 3 times regarding the Holocaust during that, essay on care and dementia. How many times do you need to mention the fucking Holocaust in an essay on care and dementia? Really? No blacks, no dogs, no Irish. He mentioned that. It was he mentioned basically every communist thinker you can think of. Theodore Adorno, big shout out to Theo, Big Ted. They were all getting fucking shouts out in that. Marx himself, I believe, was mentioned in it. This guy is so transparent. This is an absolute nudge unit. Well, he is playing the role of he's an influencer role. It's a premeditated role. He was tasked with it, and he's playing it. I don't think there's any sincerity in this man whatsoever. I think, there's a lot of people, they drift into these things and then, they get pushed one way by greed or avarice or whatever else. This guy, no. I think this guy's literally been briefed. Comes from a military family, a successful military family. His grandfather was a aide-de-camp of the NATO the NATO Air Force General of Europe. Who was a baron to something or other. There's also, as I put at the end of that other video, there's a lot of Masonic imagery in his work as well. There's a lot of one eyes and fucking pyramids and all the rest of it. He is playing a fucking role, and it's so transparent. So transparent. So there you go. I just thought I'd bang this out. Make of it, as ever, what you will. Okay, this one's on the subject of Raw Egg Nationalist, aka Charles Cornish Dale, and I'm really going to try and keep this as brief as possible. And I'm going to assume that the listener has got some awareness of the guy in question, just to not labour over points which probably quite a lot of people that listen to this might already know. But I will do a very brief summary. He is an individual who has been running the Raw Egg Nationalist account, I don't know, for maybe 4 or 5 years, something like that, and posting anonymously on the internet. And then he was doxxed by Hope Not Hate, particularly unpleasant organisation and a particularly unpleasant sort of tactic that they use. But it did emerge that the image he was presenting online was quite the contrary to real life. And most famously, he was owning people for having brown eyes, which is just like, You know, I mean, that's just weird. Like, I mean, it's even more weird. I don't even suppose then, because if you were like some blonde, blue-eyed, like, I don't know, Swede or textbook kind of Norwegian, and you were doing that, I'd still think it's weird, and I'd still think you're a bit of a weirdo and a nutter. Because I have no idea, but probably like 70% of Europe has got brown eyes. But for Cornish Dale, you know, whilst he was anonymous, that was something to sort of own people over. But you know, the post reveal, it gets even weirder, because this is what he looks like. Now, famously, he has proclaimed himself to be 100% British, and his swarthiness, he has, he said is in relation to being dark Welsh, which I just don't believe, and I really couldn't give a shit. Like, I mean, I think people in the sort of nationalist sphere are probably a bit too spurgy about this, in all honesty. And like, I mean, that's a thorny issue in itself, but you know, at the end of the day, it is 2025, and there has been like mass migration for, you know, well, I don't know, for 70 years in earnest. So there are going to be some consequences to that. And it's just like, at a certain point, if you are going to be serious about these things, you know, you have to accept that some people are, you know, percentages of one thing, percentages of the other. Now, the thing is, he's not honest about it. He doesn't say, yeah, you know what, I think, and I'm not actually sure, I don't have the answer here. I don't have the answer anywhere, really, but like, I think it said that he was born in Libya. And I mean, I think he said his grandfather met his grandmother in Libya. And this is detailed. His grandfather was in the RAF. He's posted pictures of his grandfather, by the way. And I mean, he posted the pictures. It's of his grandfather. I'm not going to post family member. As much as I dislike this man, and I really do, genuinely quite dislike him. His grandfather, you know, is gone from this world and has nothing to do with this, and was in the RAF, and probably a nice bloke. I'm going to go by that assumption, and I'm not going to post his picture here. But he did post his picture on Twitter, and he talked about what he was doing in Libya, and he was in the RAF, and he was obviously a very well-respected man in the RAF, because he was chosen to flank JFK, you know, when he landed on the airbase. And when I say flank, like literally walk with him off the airstrip, whatever. So he's a highly respected RAF man in Libya, and that was where he met his soon-to-be wife. He presumably took a wife in Libya. Now, just purely by my own supposition, I don't think there's that many like European women knocking around on RAF bases or there or thereabouts, or just even in Libya itself. So, I mean, when we look at Mr. Cornish Dale and we put the pieces together, I would assume that he married either a Libyan or, probably more likely, a merchant's daughter, something like that, because he had a good record. He went on to be. This is all from you know, Charlie's words here. So I'm talking out of school here. His grandfather went on to be I can say a chef de partie. I really can't think of the word, but he was basically, it's like a French word that they use in the military. He's not a chef de partie. He was basically a personal secretary of, I think it was the guy from the NATO air marshal for Europe. So this guy was highly respected member of the military and in the administration, and it was clearly. I don't think a guy like that marries down, is the point I'm trying to make here. I don't think a guy like that marries some, you know, girl who was serving drinks at a diplomat's function. I think, as I stated, he probably married a local merchant's daughter. When we look at Mr. Cornish Dale, the younger, it's quite apparent that that's not a Welshman. Again, this is not a spurgy thing. This is not like I'm trying to own the fucking guy for this, but he just doesn't look Welsh. And actually, his grandfather, who he did post the picture of, does not look particularly swarthy either. He just looks like a normal British person, which Charles Cornish Dale does not. So, as I stated, this is all very weird already. But see, my issue with this guy is he basically is in he's just in a fucking nudge unit. This is an online nudge unit. I think it's premeditated. I think his role even has been premeditated. He attended Oxford University, He got a PhD, I believe, in medieval history. And I think he might have even attended Cambridge as well. I think he attended both. Read that somewhere, which is fairly odd, but whatever. So he's highly academic and obviously highly intelligent, certainly in an academic sense. And this is exactly the sort of thing that appeals to certain individuals and certain individuals that set up networks. They want competent people in charge. Individuals that set up networks. They want in certain roles. It's like he is an acolyte of Bronze Age pervert. He was a Jewish homosexual by the name of Kostin Alamiru, who, again, I'm going to assume people know who he is, but in a nutshell, he rebadged Nietzscheism, and he's got a very specific way of posting, a linguistic kind of, delivery. Which, again, this all just seems like nudge unit stuff. This seems to kind of like they've dreamed up like figures, to act as a delivery device for this message. And Bronze Age pervert is very successful in that. I mean, I don't know. He is a successful, e-influencer in that kind of sphere. And he basically, like as I say, he rebadged Nietzsche. He wrote this book. I actually read the book. I actually quite liked the book, which is me being stupid, evidently. I read that book in 2020. I think the start of 2020, when everything was going weird with. And I mean, I kind of liked it at the time, but it's clear that it's now I'm looking at it with more dubious eyes, and it's clear what it is really. They're just trying to find a niche, and they're putting in this delivery device to do it. And in that instance, Bronze Age pervert, and it's all basically the premise of his book. At the end of his book, I just thought, well, is that it? He kind of gets to the end and he says, to be successful and all the rest of it, everyone's basically just got to, turn into gym rats. And like, you can win the optics war. And it's just like, so hang on, that's the way to save Europe, is to go to the fucking gym and like be a complete, self-obsessive and stress out about your lower pectoral muscles. Which is just like, I mean, Raw Egg Nationalist has kind of picked this up a bit, but Raw Egg Nationalist, as I say, he is quite intelligent, he's well-spoken, he's urbane. He does, to me, he sounds like Douglas Murray. It's the same kind of vibe there. And, it's a bit like, the distinction between Alex Jones and David Icke. I mean, they're separate figures, although, having said that, I believe Mr. Cornishdale has worked with InfoWars. But it's a little bit like you've got the more kind of sort of sensible kind of British kind of voice in Icke, stroke Raw Egg Nationalist, and then you've got the sort of batshit kind of Alex Jones, brash, kind of more like, hard-hitting kind of persona, which probably appeals more to the Americans and perhaps the internationals. And that is exactly how I foresee it, and I think this is all comes downstream from Peter Thiel, who is a Jewish homosexual, like is Bronze Age pervert. And I mean, if you look at the sort of people that Mr. Cornishdale retweets and interviews and all the rest of it, there are a lot of Jewish homosexuals. There's people like Milo, all these guys. I mean, at a certain point, like, he's got a magazine called Man's World. You know what I mean? And it's full of pictures of half-naked men. Now, it's not congruous to me that this guy is as he portrays himself to be. Like, he lives at home with his mother, apparently, into his 40s. And he's been wintering with his mother, I believe, for 5 or 6 years. I think since 2019 it was written that he sort of scurries back. I mean, that is... When you realise that these people, they're constantly portraying, like, the longhouse. And they're saying the longhouse is this terrible matriarchal kind of concept. And, we have to avoid this. And we have to go out there and be men and live on the edge and be like our ancestors who, bestrode the world and all this and all the rest of it. And he fucking lives home with his mother for 6 years and he's in his early 40s. Do you know what I mean? It's just... I don't know, this is the sort of thing that I just kind of think people are lost if they don't look at people like that, ascertain what they're all about and just fucking walk away, because it's just like you don't follow anything that you actually preach apart from getting in good shape, basically, and eating eggs, presumably. Even that fun. I mean, I don't know if he's on gear. I just shouldn't have thought so, to be fair. But whatever. I don't trust anything that these people say. And if you look at the sort of stuff they come out with, it is absolute nudge unit stuff. It's information laundering, as I stated in a previous video. Everything this guy has said since the word go on Ukraine, he just publishes every single ridiculous retweet or every single ridiculous statement. Bioweapons this, bioweapons that. Oh, men are being dragged, or 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds are being conscripted and thrown in the army, thrown in a truck and driven away. Just complete bollocks, just over and over and over again. I'm not even going to bother putting the screenshots in. You can go on his Twitter and just, like, you know, search Ukraine. And it's just constant. That there is absolutely, there's no even attempt to sort of be balanced in what he does. As I say, he's got a PhD from Oxford. He's not a stupid man. This is the same criticism I said of James Delingpole, a guy who has had a top career in journalism and understands that you have to check a source before you put your name to it. I mean, this is like journalism 101. And I think Cornish Dale himself, I think he was, I mean, certainly he's done journalism, inverted commas. So he should know that as well. But all they do is just retweet, bang, 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 all the ridiculous stuff like fucking Zelensky's bought this mansion, and it's just retweeting stuff like Zelensky's bought the King Charles's private fucking mansion. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And then you follow the link and it's Zero Hedge or one of these sites. Because it's information laundering. This is a network and they need influencers, you know, who can do that, who can push it. Because if you follow this guy and you like his fitness advice or whatever, his spurgy, be Sigma, be a weirdo, you know, which is basically their message, it seems to me. And you like all that, and then you hear someone you like retweeting some dubious bullshit. It's the information washing. And this is what these people do. Everything comes downwind from Peter Thiel, I believe. I think Peter Thiel throws his money around all over the distance, you know, scene. You know, and everything is pushing narratives favourable to him. And I mean, quite possibly they're on Russia's teat as well. I don't know. I don't know where the disparity is, to be honest with you. Perhaps it's a one and the same. I don't know, but they certainly have shared objectives. But with this guy, as I say, it's everything's spurgy, everything is beer Sigma, drink raw eggs. Like, I don't know, this is a cheap shot, but why would you do that when you can cook a fucking omelette? I mean, it's a serious point that I think I actually asked the guy years back, like 3 years ago, before I knew anything really beyond him. I was like, okay, what you're saying is interesting, but why would I drink raw eggs when I can cook and it takes me like 7 minutes or something to cook an omelette and I can have some nice bit of spinach with it and it's even healthier? But you know what I mean? It's just one weird trick, isn't it? It's one weird trick. It's a little NLP kind of hook. Raw egg nationalist, boof. And that's his hook and that's his way in. And it's all premeditated. And as I'm going to try and show here, these are some essays and some content which comes from his reveal days. And this is when he was presumably doing his PhD. Now, you can say that, you know, okay, people change a lot in 10 years. Perhaps. But I think I'm just going to read through a few key quotes, and I will put all the links in the comments here, so you can read them in full yourself if you're interested. He's not a bad writer. He's competent as a writer. I mean, it's not a particularly interesting subject matter, in all honesty. Not to me, anyway. But there's 3 pieces here. The first one is about care. So I think he did something about care in his dissertation or whatever it is. So this is from an essay he wrote for King's Review, which is a magazine from either Oxford or Cambridge. And so he was tasked with writing an essay on care and dementia. And would you just see what does he crowbar into this essay on care and dementia? Write me an essay on care and dementia, please, Charles. Well, let's just see what points he hits. And this is literally the first paragraph. Okay, quote, in March last year, David Cameron announced another national crisis to go with the economy and Britain's broken society. To these crises, one real and one imaginary, brackets, because society was fixed when? No dogs, no blacks, no Irish. So, in this, end quote, in this, literally, so in the second sentence, he's kvetching about these signs which didn't really exist in any number. It's an urban myth, quite frankly, and it's wafted up people like John Lydon talk about this. No dogs, no blacks, no Irish signs, which absolutely did not exist certainly in any kind of large number in Britain, certainly post 1969, because they would be illegal. And if you had a property or a premises and you were, you know, this is against the Race Relations Act, you'd get potentially closed down. Like, you couldn't say this. And there's one photograph of a sign saying no blacks, no dogs, no Irish, and it's like literally written in a fucking blacks, no dogs, no Irish, and into what could just be a semi-detached house's window. There's nothing else to it. If there were these signs everywhere, and you have like Irish newspapers in fucking Ireland, you have all the sort of Irish Republic journalists, they'd go around with photographers, and they'd take pictures of them and they'd report it to the police because they could get those places shut down. So the whole thing is completely fabricated. But it does fulfill a role in, you know, perpetuating this myth, which is something that leftist academics often have done in the last 40 years, because it underlines, oh God, it was so awful back then. You know, they were saying no blacks and they were putting blacks and Irish and dogs all in the same sentence. I mean, it's just bollocks. But for Cornishdale, you know, this is banging his foot. It's literally the second sentence in an essay about care and dementia. He's kvetching about these imaginary signs which, frankly, leftist academics, many of whom probably have a certain heritage, you know, overstated massively overstated. Anyway, So, okay, I mean, as I say, I'm not going to read the articles. I'm going to put the links in. You can just go and read them yourself if you're interested. And I recommend you do that, just so, you know, people say, oh, you're putting these out of context. Well, just fucking read the article if you think that, and then tell me I'm putting them out of context. So anyway, it goes further. Then in this article, again about care and dementia, to be clear, he starts talking about, well, okay, let's just get into it. On first inspection, Friedrich Nietzsche, he of the, quote, blonde beast and the Übermensch, appears hardly the most suitable philosopher to tell us anything about care and compassion. Brackets, though his tragic life might, he died mad and in the care of his anti-Semitic sister, whom he hated and who edited his work so it fell in line with her proto-Nazi sympathies. So again, he's kvetching about, you know, the, you know, presumably proto-Nazi sympathies in, you know, Nietzsche's work. And not only he's kvetching, he's trying to sort of say, no, Nietzsche was okay. All the sort of like edgy stuff was this mad, whom he hated, his hated anti-Semitic sister. So he's kvetching there about his hated anti-Semitic sister of Nietzsche and how she kind of spoiled this man's work. You know, tell me if I'm putting any sugar on this, because I'm really trying not to. Anyway, so okay, he's got his Kvetch in there. Again, this is about care and dementia, and he's getting in the anti-Semitics. You know, he's hitting the anti-Semitic. He's hitting that point. He's hitting on about no blacks, no dogs, Irish. Again, I don't want to overstate this, but this is in an article about dementia and care homes. So, okay, and it does continue. Then he starts talking about a woman called Martha Nussbaum, who apparently is a neo-Aristotelian. And he kind of draws distinction between her work and the work of an Italian philosopher named Giorgio Agamben. So, okay, just to read the quote here. Quote, on the other hand, for the Italian philosopher Giorgio Agamben, Aristotle, to put it rather bluntly, set Western history on its course towards the gas chambers. So, okay, in this essay on care and dementia, we've already got mention of the gas chambers. Mention of the gas chambers, we've got mention of evil Nazi anti-Semites kind of poisoning the work of Nietzsche. We've got no blacks, no dogs, no Irish signs being an indication of Britain being broken in the past, you know, when it's evil and racist. And now we've got the first mention of the gas chambers. There will be more. In the modern era, Agamben claims a zone of indistinction emerged which linked Zoe and Bios. These are Greek terms, where they had once been separate, making possible an easy slippage from one to the other. Those who are fully human today are subhuman tomorrow. Okay. Yeah, okay. Fit only for the slave labour, medical experimentation and murder. I mean, he has not mentioned lampshades. In all fairness to him, I think, you know, should just give him credit there. Maybe it was in his draft. Maybe he mentioned lampshades in his draft, but it didn't make the final cut. And this isn't enough, again, because now we get mention of Theodore Adorno, who is a gentleman I've mentioned previously on this channel. I mean, really in conjunction with people claiming that he was involved in Tavistock and the latter 1960s operation, which is probably inaccurate. But Theodore Adorno was a communist Jewish academic who was a founding member of the Frankfurt School. But Mr. Cornishdale was quite taken with him. Evidently, he's quoting him in this article again on care and dementia. So, as Theodore Adorno famously asked whether there was a straight line of development from the slingshot to the atom bomb, one might similarly ask whether there is also a line from Aristotle to Auschwitz. So we've got the second mention. I mean, you know, care and dementia. Care and dementia, Charles. Why are you talking about Auschwitz? Why are you talking about the British being evil, no blacks, no dogs, no Irish, which didn't really even exist? And why are you kvetching about like evil anti-Semitic systems? Like this is very strange. Very strange. To me, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay, it goes on. It would surely be a gross, even offensive simplification to imagine that Aristotle, by having certain ideas, made Auschwitz inevitable. Again, Auschwitz. Like, why are you talking about Auschwitz in this? What's Auschwitz got to do with it? But, you know, it's okay, it's got something to do with everything, really, for some people. But, so, you know, it would be a gross, even offensive simplification to imagine that Aristotle was. He's not leaning his weight behind this, to be fair. But he is saying that, you know, certain things made Auschwitz inevitable. Or, you know, he's certainly saying that. Well, he's not questioning anything, is he? You know, this is YouTube, but I mean, you know, it's possible, really, when you look at the past that, you know, who writes history? Anyway. What this debate does show, I think, is how well-meaning moral categories, not unrelated to our case, can be subverted and go horribly awry. So there you go. I mean, this is, again, I sound like a broken record, but this is about care and dementia. Okay, and this is in his final paragraph, in his summation. Quote, in his famous third letter to Arnold Rouge, the young Marx explained. So he's quoting a young Karl Marx, a young, you know, the founder of communism, Jewish intellectual. Quote, the reform of consciousness consists entirely in making the world aware of its own consciousness, in arousing it from its dream of itself, in exploring its own actions to it. And so might we see our questioning why we blame who and what we blame. Blame, interesting verb to start bandying around. Whether it be individual bankers, not the banking system, individual carers, not the institution of care. So might we see this as one necessary reform of consciousness to be made if we want finally to crack the most vital question of all, what is to be done? Well, I mean, I don't really, in all honesty, maybe I am thick, in fact, that's probably, I mean, I don't really, well, almost certainly the case, certainly to an extent, but I mean, I don't really know what he's saying. Well, almost certainly the case, certainly. Shout out to young Karl Marx. The reform of consciousness consists entirely in making the world aware of its own consciousness. But, you know, as I said, in this essay about care and dementia, you've got no blacks, no dogs, no Irish, indicating that the British were always kind of sick and racist and broken. You know, again, just to read that sentence again, to go with the economy in Britain's broken society, to these crises, one real and one imaginary, because society was fixed when? No dogs, no blacks, no Irish. So again, he's pointing to the past and saying it was awful, it was full of racists and people that didn't want to let their property to certain groups based on ethnicity, and presumably, generalizations made, probably, empirically on those groups' behavior, which certainly didn't exist any time after 1969 and the Race Relation Act, but whatever. So we got that in at the start. Then we've got him kvetching about Nietzsche and saying he's not the most suitable philosopher to tell us anything about care and compassion, although his tragic life, he died mad in care of his anti-Semitic sister, whom he hated, and edited his work so that it fell in line with her proto-Nazi sympathies. And then, we've got the first mention of the gas chambers. On the other hand, the Italian philosopher Agamben stated that, Aristotle put Western history on course to the gas chambers. I mean, it's just remarkable. Then we've got Adorno getting a shout out, and one might similarly ask, and this is from his words here, so let's read this bit again. As Adorno famously asked whether there was a straight line of development from the slingshot to the atom, one might similarly ask, so this presumably is the author's voice here, whether there is also a line from Aristotle to Auschwitz. So he's saying it's fair to ask this question. I mean, okay, maybe. Again, the subject matter. Seems that you're crowbarring this in. And then, kvetching about Auschwitz's inevitability, how history can be subverted and go horribly awry. I mean, again, keep my powder dry there. But, in the final summation, he's quoting Marx. So, that's all a bit weird, really, isn't it, when you look at his latter work. And we go forward a little bit. There was an interview with him by Melvyn Bragg. Presumably this went out on Radio 4, and again this was on the subject of care. Melvyn Bragg, if people aren't aware, he's a sort of very well respected broadcaster. He's actually one of my he's one of my more preferred of the sort of Tavistock Inc. kind of flagship kind of broadcasters. But anyway, let's just get into this. So he appeared on this radio show, and this was a debate. And again, it's who should be responsible for care? And I've just got a couple of quotes from this, which is again, it's interesting. I believe it's at least somewhat telling. Okay, Charles Cornishdale. What's interesting is how we in the West categorise people and treat them accordingly, and in particular how we order lives into distinct stages, each having its own distinct expectations, responsibilities, and mode of experience. This affects not only how we experience and understand our own lives, but also how we treat others, and in turn how we are treated by them. But our categories aren't the only way of ordering a life. One of my favourite books in anthropology. So this is a big subject, right? This is a guy who studied anthropology at university, Oxford, with PhD. He's going to have read a lot of books about anthropology, which is an interesting subject. I'm sure there's some fascinating books out there. But one of Charles Cornishdale's favourite books on anthropology is called No Aging in India by Lawrence Cohen. Cohen considers the idea that until very recently, there wasn't such a thing as aging in India. Wow. This might sound like postmodern nonsense, but what he means is that there wasn't, quote, aging as a distinct stage of life, as an irredeemable descent towards death in the way we understand it. The elderly weren't sent to liminal environments away from everyone else, but remained a central part of their community. So, I mean, big shout out to the Indian subcontinent, basically, and, their approach to familial aging. I mean, I don't know, but again, I am not a learned man by any stretch, but I don't look to the Asian subcontinent and think that's a great familial model to adopt. I don't think there's anything sociologically of value to adopt from India. I mean, again, perhaps this sounds terribly ignorant, perhaps it is. That's just my instinct, and I'm a fan of that. I'm a fan of instinct. Maybe Lawrence Cohen, the author of one of his favourite books on anthropology, maybe he could convince me. I don't know. I'm not going to chance that. I did look at that book. It's a recent book. It's maybe, 15 years old, 20 years old. So it's not like a classic. I mean, and as I say, anthropology, it's a fascinating subject area. You've got a smorgasbord of books to read from, to have as your favourite. But Mr. Cohen talking about how wonderful the Indians are regarding aging, that really floated Mr. Cornishdale's boat by the sound of it. Anyway, we continue. Cohen's book is provocative, but it isn't a guide in any meaningful sense. We have very specific problems. For instance, I worry that the terms of the care debate are solely economic. And then, I mean, finally, there's an appearance he made at Wells Cathedral. And in this speech, this is about Reformation. And even in this speech about Reformation, this is from 2017. This is just a short quote, just to put in at the end here. Quote, Europe, united under the supreme spiritual authority of the Pope, is still a Europe of kings and emperors. And further abroad, in the New World and the East, the people still groan under the yoke of colonialism and direct rule by European powers. End quote. So, you know, I mean, the frame here is just your typical sort of leftist academic, you know, groaning under the yoke of colonialism and the direct rule by European powers, and Europe is still a Europe of kings and emperors. So, you know, there are just clear distinctions in this man's work, you know, before, and you can be fair and you can say, well, people can change their minds and all the rest of it, and that is absolutely the case. However, when you add all that up with his backstory, he is not being honest. He is not 100% British. Which again, is no crime. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just weird if you pretend you are when you're not. You know, further to that, he's inarguably, in my view, he is part of a sort of information laundering network. He is an e-influencer. I think there's premeditation in this. I believe he's playing a premeditated role. As I stated, it's people like Bronze Age Pervert and this guy, people who attended Oxford, Yale. These are the sort of people that are up to snuff for these people. That, you know, okay, if we're going to put a guy in here, we want that guy to be competent and we want him to be credible and we want to look at his CV. You know, I think I said before, you know, there's people in the dissident right that sort of kvetch and go, oh my God, if only we had a billionaire backer. While, you know, spending their entire life sitting in a back room watching ITV4, you know, you're not going to get a billionaire backer because they want people that are credible, that have got an academic record or a record in business or whatever it could be. You know, if they're gonna trust you with a role within, you know, well, what I would regard as a nudge unit, which is exactly what this guy is. I don't think he's genuine. I really don't. I think it's a role that has been prepared. You know, I think he's been shoehorned in. I think they've seen that he's competent, he's a good writer, he's intellectual. Perhaps he's got, you know, a certain background. I don't know. It is. Oh, there is one other thing. There is a lot of Masonic imagery in this man's work. Like, if you look at the pages in his magazine, there's a lot of dodgy imagery there. Which, you know, arguably, if you wanted to speculate, when you look at a guy who's got like a top military kind of background in his family, I'm gonna state I'm of the mind that he's married, that, you know, he's of the tribe to some extent, with a military pedigree, who attended, like, you know, Oxford and all the rest of it. I think if it quacks like a duck after a certain point, and if you then open a magazine, you know, called Man's World, with all your pictures of half-naked men and all the rest of it, but you also, amongst all the half-naked men, you've got, you know, one-eyed Simba, all the rest of it, but you also, amongst all the half-naked else, it's all a bit sus. It's all a bit sus, which I think is an understatement regarding Mr. Cornishdale. So, in summary to this, it seems to me pretty obvious that this guy is not sincere. I believe he is playing a role. The depths of that role, how long that role has gone back, I don't know. But if you look at his academic history, if you look at the people in his orbit, well, I mean, he is part of the Peter Thiel nudge unit, along with Jewish homosexual, Bronze Age pervert. Peter Thiel is a Jewish homosexual. This guy, well, he's dark Welsh apparently, and he lives at home with his mother for the last 6 years. Well, okay, whatever. But, you know, at a certain point, there's red flags all over this. And you just look at their output, you just look what they produce, and it's information washing, information laundering, you know, and it is nudge unit stuff. And I think that somewhere in some nudge unit or social engineering paper, something was written, they thought, well, this is how we capture it. We've got to capture certain key demographics, and they put in people who could do this all over the discourse. This is just one little niche, but they put in these people all over the discourse, and they're controlled, and they forward all this sort of, the same items, they forward the same agenda, they capture demographics with their, one weird trick, bodybuilding, one weird trick, nutritional advice, all the rest of it. But under the bonnet, it's pretty clear what it is, and it doesn't really bemuse me, because I just think most people in the online right are just they're either thick or they're lazy, and they just can't be bothered really, and if they like a post, they'll click it and retweet it really, and they won't really think beyond that and where this has come from and what the intention of the person pushing these narratives and where it comes from really. And I mean, in this case, it's a fucking nudge unit. So I would be very dubious about this guy. As I say, I don't believe he's sincere. I mean, you can look into his past there. He's not sincere, because he's not dark Welsh. There's something else in there. Whatever, just be honest about it. But he's not. So, that is insincere. Seems to me it's clear what the guy is, because, if you were anything else, if you just say it, be like, okay, yeah, I'm a bit Libyan. Well, okay, fine. That's how it is. It's not a big deal, is it? But there's one group that it would be a big deal, and would kind of, suddenly that would really, he would lose his grip on his listenership, wouldn't he? On his readership. The nudge unit wouldn't be so effective with that information out there, so he presumably he keeps it to himself. Or he's dark. If you want to tell me this is a dark Welshman, by the way, by all means. If you want to tell me that a duck is a cat, by all means. But some people will, because they want to hang on to the parasocial relationship. Well, okay, fair enough. Do what you want. Buy his books. Sit at his feet. Seems to me pretty clear what it all is. Okay, today I thought I'd have a bit of a ramble on the subject of raw milk. A bit of a weird one, isn't it? But this is the sort of thing which is pushed by these these weird little cliques that you see, like people exemplified by Raw Egg Nationalist, previously mentioned in another video, and kind of his little circle there, Bronze Age pervert, one or two others. Kind of e-marketers really, and it's one weird trick. It's exactly what it is. And they kind of present various things as being some kind of Alexa, which you have been deprived by the sort of, the evil elites, because they've got this terrible plan to kind of weaken and destroy you. Now, there is an element of truth in that latter part, that, the people in control of the food supply, are not to be trusted, and you should exercise, caution in following any of their advice. I mean, that's kind of fair enough. I do agree with that. But you don't need to be a spurg about it, and you don't need to be a mug about it. And a lot of these people, I mean, what they push is like something like raw milk it's like the way they push it, the framing they do it, it's kind of so cheesy. But as I say, they've kind of weaponized this quite reasonable fear and mistrust of, global corpse food, Inc., as it were. But then they kind of, they use this to capture a demographic, and they push these one weird tricks. And it's basically like, if you drink raw milk, you'll turn into some kind of, Scythian warrior prince, on the steppe with your horse, because you've drunk some raw milk. And I mean, I didn't know anything about it really, and frankly, I still don't a great deal. But I did speak to my mother about it, and she does know quite a lot about it, because she grew up on a dairy farm. And both her parents, on both sides of her parents, they're all dairy farmers. Like that side of my family, I don't know how far they go back, probably like hundreds of years, dairy farmers. If not, who knows, thousands, I don't know. Whatever, they know about dairy farming. So I sort of spoke to her, quite open-minded about it, and I said, what do you think of raw milk? And she said, yeah, it's good. It can be good for you, but you have to be very, very careful. And there are genuine health risks involved with it that you want to be very wary of. And I said, well, did you drink it on the farm, when you're growing up? And she said, yes, but see, my granddad was utterly fastidious about, hygiene on his farm. He had very high standards. He kind of took pride in running a very good farm, like, and you know, she drunk it. She said, yeah, it was good. It's good for you. But again, like, you know, you need to be very wary of what's good for you. But again, like, you know, you need to be very wary of what's good for you. Nasty bacteria can get into that. And then what you left with, you might end up, I mean, so like, potentially, in some cases, you might get TB from a glass of milk, like, you know what I mean? And this is the key point here, is you're chasing minimal, and it really is minimal kind of nutritional gains for a risk of what? You know, genuine, serious, life-debilitating illnesses. It's foolish, ultimately, I believe, unless you know the farmer. If you know the farmer and you can vouch for him and you've seen his farm and you've seen that, you know, he cleans his pipes, he does all that stuff, then you are kind of rolling the dice when you drink that. So if you go to some like country fair and it's like, oh, raw milk stand, and you go and you think you're going to glug it and turn into some Sarmatian. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, what will you get? If that's good raw milk, you'll get a more nutritious glass of milk, like, than you would if you bought it from, you know, a decent sort of, you know, organic or whatever, decent, you know, normal supermarket milk. What is the gain compared to the risk? You got to talk. What is the gain compared to the risk? You got to talk. What is the gain compared to the risk? He ran a very tight ship on his farm, and, you know, he would not have allowed, like, his kids to drink milk from certain other farmers in the area because he felt that they were sloppy. And this is in the 50s and the 60s, you know what I mean? So, I don't know. I don't know if this is interesting or not. Quite possibly not. But, you know, I thought it was kind of relevant because, as I say, like, my mum, she's a farm girl. Like, she doesn't spurg out about germs or about, you know, a bit of that, a bit of dust, whatever. You know, they're quite robust people, farmers, in that regard. But she says she absolutely didn't advise buying raw milk from any source that you don't know. And when I say know, it's not just like, no, Ted, oh, he seems like a good bloke. I mean, you got to really know the quality of their farm and their setup. If not, like I say, you're risking serious illness for what? Marginal gains. And going back to the characters in question here, I mean, it really is all about marginal gains. All this stuff. They sell you this false kind of, like, you know, idea that this is the thing that will really, like, you know, tip the balance in my favor. Like, this is the thing that will, you know, send me out living this life of adventure. I mean, it's really fucking cheesy. It's cheesy stuff. No pun vaguely intended, I suppose. Cheesy. You know, they'll present it. It's quite, I suppose it can be quite kind of, you know, the sort of the way they present it can be seductive. You know, this idea, like, yeah, you know, we're being held back by these evil corporations, because you kind of are. But at the same time, I mean, look at the fucking military, right? You know, what do they consume? The military do not give their soldiers raw milk. They don't give their soldiers, like, chia seeds and, you know, coconut oil. And all. They just kind of give them, like, bacon and eggs and, like, chips and beans and beef burgers and chili con carne. Do you know what I mean?
We've got 28 days rations here. Obviously, that's not going to fit into the bargain. Each man, it's up to him what he keeps and what he takes, because don't forget, he's going to be carrying the stuff at the end of the day. You've got a rice pudding, keep that. You've got beef burger and beans and steak and potatoes. Throw one, keep the other one. Drinking chocolate mix. Because we're on hard routine, we won't be heating anything or cooking anything. But this can be mixed with cold water and drunk, nutritious. Keep.
These guys, it is performative masculinity that they do.
It's always a good day to swing your orb around. I made this orb myself with a basketball, broom handle, some screws, and a little bit of concrete. Swinging a mace is fantastic.
I mean, you know, like prancing around in your garden with a mace with your shirt off, right? That's not really, you know, I mean, you look at what the British military do. You look at what, you know, they don't mess around with maces in their training. You know, it's quite brutal, like, just repetitive training, isn't it? A lot of body weight, a lot of pull-ups, press-ups, body weight squats, fuckloads of running. You know, they don't piss around with maces, you know. And as far as I'm aware, like, you know, raw milk is not on the menu in the British military. If all this stuff was really, like, you know, pushing you be a superhuman and all the rest of it, you know, they'd apply it in the military because you're an investment, you're an asset of theirs, and they want to make you, you know, they want to make the most of that asset. As I say, like, just take what these characters say with a pinch of salt, a pinch of you know, Himalayan organic granulated salt or whatever it is they consume. It's just like everything they do is e-marketing, essentially. It's e-marketing, but it's also got this weird kind of slightly political kind of thing. And the reason why it's political is they want to capture a demographic. They are working on behalf of other figures, and they want to capture this demographic, and they do that with this kind of one weird trick marketing stuff. And again, like, you know, in a lot of it, it is there are degrees of truth in there, but it's also very spurky. Now, the three main characters in it that I can ascertain anyway, the character I've mentioned, Bronze Age pervert, and that other guy, for weirdo, you know, they're all, I mean, they're all in their 40s as I can ascertain. Maybe the other guy's 30s. None of them are married, none of them have got kids. This is very metrosexual, which is probably the kindest way you could put it. I mean, one of them definitely is a Jewish homosexual. At a certain point, and you know, these two characters, you know, the latter ones, you know, they're in objectively great shape, and they prattle on about demographics all day. I don't want to repeat myself. I kind of already made this point on the previous video, but you know, there are red flags there, aren't there? You know, it's all like gym, or, you know, in your garden gym. It's not even go to the gym, is it? It's not even just go down to your normal gym, do some compound lifts, you know, maybe knock the bag around, like, you know, go home, maybe have a protein shake, and, you know, eat some pork chops in the evening. You know, that's just kind of normal, isn't it? But, you know, you can't really sell anything with that. So it's all this kind of weird, sort of slightly esoteric stuff. Like stuff like ancestral diet. Now, I quite like the basic principle of the ancestral diet. I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with it, if that's what you want to do. But why the fuck wouldn't I want to eat an avocado? Do you know what I mean? And the ancestral diet is like, basically you've got to eat what your kind of, you know, deep ancestry would have eaten. I don't think there's any scientific basis to it, I've got to be honest with you. But I don't eat non-European food because I don't like it. You know, the closest I will get is I do actually quite like hummus. That's it. Like, you know, the rest of it, just not really interested. I think it's slop. But, you know, as I say, not really interested. I think it's slop. An avocado. You know, but these guys, they kind of want to weaponize that. And I mean, this guy talking about the ancestral diet, like, you know, speaking of hummus, I don't believe his ancestral diet is wholly Northwestern European at all. Apparently he was born in Libya, and he looks, frankly, Semitic. Now, I don't know which way Semitic that goes, but he does not look like a dark Welshman, which is what he claims. He says, no, I'm just dark Welsh. But he actually says it in an evasive way, so he tells you what he is. Because people were putting it to him, well, where are you from? And his reply to that is, I have the blood of the Welsh in my veins, or something like that. Well, he probably does. He probably has 50, maybe 75% of that. But, like, why wouldn't, if you're part Libyan, right, you just admit it. There's nothing wrong with that. If you've got a grandmother or a mother from Libya, if you're half or quarter Libyan, well, yeah, I'm quarter Libyan. Oh, okay, fair enough. If that's what you are, that's what you are. You just admit it. Oh, okay, mate, fine. You're a little bit Libyan, but you're basically British as well. You know, fair enough. Okay, but you don't admit that. So that tells me, because there's one group that would be toxic to his brand, isn't there? There's one group that if it were divulged that he was, you know, of this group, similar group to his mentor, possibly. You know, that wouldn't look good, would it? So, you know, the silence to me on that matter tells me that perhaps he is. Perhaps he is. So I don't know, what is in the ancestral diet? Matzo ball soup? These gains from matzo ball soup? I don't know. Possibly, I'm just speculating. Anyway, I think this video's run its course, probably about 3 or 4 minutes ago, so whatever. Just in conclusion, like, don't take daft risks chasing like these massively overinflated minimal gains that you'll get from a slightly more nutritious cup of milk. If you can get raw milk from a genuine, reputable farm, great. But if you're just buying it in some like market or something, as I say, you don't know where it's from. Like 100 years ago, there was no real machines in use. So if you're milking a cow with your hand, you're not really going to get any problems in there, with raw milk. So our ancestors, wouldn't have drunk the kind of raw milk that you'd be drinking now, because the kind of raw milk you'd be drinking now is done via machines, milking machines. And as far as I can ascertain, that's where the problems can arise. So, I'd just be wary of it. Again, cost-benefit analysis. Like a slightly more nutritious cup of milk. Potentially, it is only potentially, but the potential is there, ending up with something like fucking TB or a kidney condition. To me, I'm not going to roll the dice based on some farmers, that I don't know their levels of hygiene and, quality of their farm, to be brutally honest. Anyway, there you go. Have a good day.